In this video, I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know about marketing attribution tracking, and with everything going on right now around privacy regulations and cookie policies, and given how sporadic and patchy tracking can be at the moment, whether there's a different or more viable option to start attributing your leads and sales. Let's get into it. So in a nutshell, attribution tracking is really about identifying where your leads and sales are coming from and being able to attribute those leads and sales to a particular channel, platform, or ad campaign. Now, attribution can be a bit of a minefield because there are so many different models of attribution, such as last click attribution, first click attribution, multi-touch attribution. For example, first touch or first click attribution will be looking at the initial touch point of when and where that lead signed up. However, it won't put any credit to any later touches that lead might have had. So to give you an example, let's say somebody has come onto your website, they've downloaded a free guide, signed up to a webinar, maybe opted in to receive some form of discount, and they've then come back 6 months later from another ad campaign. The credit and the attribution is still going to be given to that initial touch point, and the credit won't be given to the ad that later brought them in when they actually decided to buy 6 months later. Whereas last click or last touch, on the other hand, is going to give the credit to that last touch somebody had before making that purchase or buying from you. Now, if you use something like multi-touch attribution, this is really going to be about spreading the credit evenly across the different touch points that a customer has had before or leading up to that purchase decision. Now, it's also important to note here that not every CRM system is going to support attribution tracking out of the box. If you have premium plans on something like HubSpot or Salesforce, you'll be able to get that attribution modeling, different models of attribution, and fairly reliable attribution tracking straight out of the box. However, if you're not on the paid plans, you may be limited as to the actual attribution you can capture. There are a number of third-party tools that can also help with this. Platforms like �WhatConvert are a great way of being able to break down the individual stages of the buyer journey to be able to see what touch points go into a successful sale. And that way you can easily identify what channels are actually working and complementing your ability to convert a lead or a prospect into an actual sale. The reason attribution is so important is because it ultimately allows you to understand which of your marketing efforts are actually helping that prospect to eventually turn into a sale. Because the reality is, most of your customers are not going to convert on that initial touch point. It's going to take several touches, several interactions of your brand and seeing your brand, seeing your ads, seeing your content, coming onto your website before somebody is actually ready to buy from you. The number of touches you require is naturally going to increase depending whether you're in B2B, B2C, and obviously the value of the product or service that you're actually selling. For example, if you're selling a very highly complex solution to businesses with a contract value of, say, £100,000 or more, that's likely going to require multiple touch points over several months or even several years for a deal to end up closing. But the important thing to remember here is that privacy regulations, cookie policies, and laws around privacy are only getting tighter and tighter, and this is unlikely to change in the near future. If anything, we're going to get to a stage where it's going to become harder and harder to track people and track their online activities. We've seen across the board, especially with a lot of platforms now banning third-party cookies, tracking is becoming more and more unreliable. Now, the other important thing to note here is that attribution in this day and age is inherently flawed. The reason why is because it doesn't factor in the way people actually buy in this day and age. Chris Walker at Refine Labs recently coined the term dark social, and dark social is meant to refer to the way that people buy, which is untrackable by attribution software. Now, dark social is meant to refer to the touch points and the influencers that lead somebody into a buying decision, which simply aren't measurable by attribution software. And these are often some of the biggest factors that are going to influence somebody's decision to buy. For example, this might be somebody mentioning your company or brand during a podcast. It could be somebody mentioning your company or brand in a post, or on Reddit, on Quora, on any of the social media forums. It might be somebody seeing one of your ads on LinkedIn or Facebook and then sharing that ad within their organization's Slack channel or in Microsoft Teams, or maybe even emailing it to a colleague directly. What then typically happens is that will get discussed in a meeting, people might be talking about it offline, a colleague, a friend, a family member might then go onto Google and search for that brand directly. Now that lead is going to be attributed as either organic search or direct, when in reality that's simply not the case, and the way that lead found out about you is completely missed and overlooked. This results in companies pouring tens if not hundreds of thousands of pounds into channels that aren't actually the originating source of how that person found out about you, and missing the absolute goldmine opportunities where you're really getting noticed. And we're seeing this more and more with clients at the moment, where we're running ads on platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn, and the conversions aren't happening on those platforms. But when people are coming through and on the contact form, they're saying where they've heard about the company, they're putting in things like LinkedIn, or colleagues sent me a screenshot of your ad or a link to your company, or told me they'd seen one of your videos, which were the videos we'd been running ads to. Now, if you were simply relying on attribution reports, you may well end up switching off LinkedIn and Facebook because it looks like on the surface you're not getting any conversions from those platforms, and then pouring all of your money into organic, not realizing that those searches you're getting are only as a result of people seeing your brands, your content on those other platforms. So my advice to you with attribution tracking in this day and age is not to rely on it as a gospel or source of truth before you make any drastic decisions about where to put your marketing budget. You also want to make sure that on any high intent forms on your website that you are asking the question, where did you hear about us? And ideally you want to have this as a free form text input box so people can actually write in, and you're giving people the opportunity to write in where they heard about you, i.e. my colleague sent me this video in our Slack channel, or forwarded me this by email, or I heard you mentioned on XYZ podcast. That's then going to give you much greater insights, as opposed to if you give people a drop down box that's just going to funnel them into choosing a particular option which might not actually even be relevant. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't be using any of the attribution reports you can get from your CRM system, but you want to make sure you're using a combination and almost a hybrid approach to attributing your lead sources, so that you make sure that you're actually getting the full picture and not putting too much weight on what you see from these attribution tracking tools. If you take this hybrid approach with your attribution tracking, this could potentially save you hundreds of thousands of pounds and really help to skyrocket your results, because you will be able to identify the exact sources and the untrackable platforms which are actually leading people to considering and buying from your company. I'm going to be linking to another video straight after this one, which is going to walk you through some of the core KPIs that you're going to want to measure to really help you amplify these efforts and take your marketing to the next level. So I'll see you there.